Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Story Tree Time. My name's Emily, and I'm here on behalf of Cincinnati Museum Center. Today is a special day because we have Omope joining us, and Omope is a wordsmith and storyteller. Her 30-plus years of experience includes stage and TV credits, lectures and performing in Germany and Turkey, and singing for social justice in the Dominican Republic. She also conducts creative writing and theater projects focused on identity, place, and belonging. She carries over 100 stories of global origin around in her head and is the vice president of the Ohio Storytelling Network and works with schools and communities with the Cincinnati Arts Association and the Ohio Arts Council. She's also a community producer for WYSO in Yellow Springs and now resides in Dayton. Omope, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Emily. It's my pleasure to be here. For those of you who know me, you know my name is Omope Carter Daboiku, and I lived in Cincinnati for over 30 years, and I'm grateful to Museum Center for continuing to utilize my services and the help they've had in my professional development. It's my pleasure to be with you today. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. is the only non-president to be honored with a national holiday and the only non-president to have a statue on the Washington, D.C. Mall. Born January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, Georgia, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was 15 when he passed the entrance exam to Morehouse College. In the summer of 1944, prior to starting classes, King traveled to Connecticut to work on a tobacco farm and wrote to his father, marveling at the openness of society and how accessible all services were to all people, regardless of the color of their skin. This experience would chart the rest of his life fighting the social order called segregation. While we remember him as a serious intellectual and advocate for social change, anecdotes from family members recall his affinity for fashionable dress, impressing the ladies, and his superb dancing skills. He graduated Morehouse College, a historically Black college, now a university, at 19, with a bachelor's degree in sociology, and was already known for his oratory expertise and his baritone voice. He pastored with his father at the Ebenezer Baptist Church in Atlanta until the age of 28, when he became the charismatic leader of SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I was 5. His voice and commitment to nonviolent protest led those devoted to social change through the 381-day-long Montgomery, Alabama bus boycott that established equal access, grassroots organizing and voter registration drives, and various acts of civil disobedience. His 1963 letter from a Birmingham jail, following the Children's March where the entire nation watched children be attacked by fire hoses and police dogs, firmly placed him as the preeminent advocate for nonviolent political change. In August of 1963, he gave his most remembered speech during the Poor People's March on Washington, D.C. I was 11. Despite the attempts of agencies like the FBI, Dr. King continued to preach and teach despite the bombing of his house and threats upon his life. His I Have a Dream speech from the 1963 March on Washington is still recited across the globe, and one day my 4 little children will be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character, remains a prayer and a socio-political goal. In 1964, his work was honored with the Nobel Peace Prize. He was 35 years old. His work expanded to make the country focus on the deep poverty that persisted, the futility of war, and the need for gender equality within the human family. I was 12 and highly impressed with his message. After 13 years of passionate advocacy for peace and social justice, at the young age of 39, Dr. King was assassinated in Memphis, Tennessee, at the Lorraine Motel on April 4th, 1968. I was 16. He was a figure in my development as a citizen of the United States because both my families migrated from the South to a small abolitionist town in Ohio in the early 1920s. I did not have the daily experience of Jim Crow's segregated life. But millions of African Americans throughout the country were intimidated into not registering to vote, limited in acquiring credit and capital, and denied equal access to education and transportation. I am grateful for the sacrifices of Dr. King, his wife, Coretta Scott King, and their children. Their sacrifices changed the lives of millions of people of all ethnicities. Each of us has a role to play in the development of society. Each of us. And if we don't play out our destiny, we could possibly shortchange the future. I'd like to share a poem by my colleague, Dr. Frank X. Walker, a professor at the University of Kentucky and the creator of the word Afrolacha. I find it particularly impactful since many people don't recognize that the Appalachian Mountains run from New York to northern Alabama. So Dr. King's work in urban communities and rural communities was throughout Appalachia, reminding us of the African American presence and influence in the region. For those of you who'd like to find this book, I'll show you. The title of it is Afrolacha. And this is found on page 32. It's entitled Little Kings. Little Kings. What if the good Reverend Dr. MLK Jr. was just Marty or Little King, not a pastor, but a little faster from the streets, quoting gangster rap, not Gandhi? Was not Dr. King, but King Doctor or Ice K, his peace sign on a gold tooth or gleaming 14-karat light from around his neck? What if somebody screaming the N-word hit him in the head with a brick and he pulled out a 9 and squeezed off 1 or 2 rounds, not tears, praying only that he not miss, sported MLK on fat brass knuckles and a left-handed diamond pinky ring, walked the streets with his homeboys, spray painting Let Freedom Ring and I Had a Dream on bus stops and stop signs? Got arrested for conspiring to incite riots, disturbing the peace, and resisting arrest. Didn't preach from no pulpit, but on a microphone behind turntables, mixing and scratching, listening to Dr. Dre, Wu-Tang, and the Notorious B.I.G. Pants down to his high tops, hat on backwards, eyes on the prize, new voice. Not no bell, no piece of nothing. That just rings when it's hit, a voice that hits back. Would he still be king? Little Kings by Frank X. Walker. Thanks for listening.